Welcome students to this session on corporate planning and corporate tax planning of module 3. Students, in this session we'll be having an overall concept understanding of what is corporate planning and what is corporate tax planning. Then how corporate tax planning plays the effective role in the corporate planning and decision making. Now, to be very precise, any of the success story of a corporate, of a business, it totally depends upon the planning that is being made. And the planning is always become successful when the end result for the stakeholders becomes fruitful, meaningful and profitable. And profitable means profit after tax. Definitely I am not speaking about something which is called as tax avoidance or tax non-payment or tax violence. Rather, I am speaking today in this subject is a tax planning or an effective tax planning, how an effective tax planning influences the decision on a business called as a business decision or the corporate planning decision. Before we go into the subject details of the tax planning, let's have an understanding about the corporate planning. Any of the business houses, any of the corporate houses which operates in our country or across the world, primarily having a few area of its segmentation or the activities. It starts with elaborated supply chain management. It has got a detailed division called as production or manufacturing. It has got a marketing segment which markets its product. It definitely have a finance wing which arranges finance, that is sourcing the finance and effective deployment of the finance so that the end result comes out in a beautiful and profitable manner. It is always manned, it is always backed by a human resources policy or HR policy or personal policy as the case may be. And finally, without which a corporate cannot survive in this corporate world, in this most competitive world in the world, is called research and development, R&D. And the planning needs to take place to frame the strategies in respect of all these activities. And today in this particular session, we will be discussing on how this corporate planning and the strategy planning effectively have the influence of taxation called as corporate taxation in a decision making strategy. Friends, my students, let's have a very brief idea about the corporate planning. We already discussed that there has to be a manufacturing segment, a production segment in any corporate. That means how much will be my production target? How much will be my target for the new product, for the existing product? What will be the production chain? What is the lead time? How much it will require from the raw material to convert it into the production finished good? Everything is determined, everything is pre-understood and budgeted, and according to the time study and the motion study, the production planning actually takes place. And whenever we speak about a production policy or the production strategies, which product I will sell, which product I will not sell, which product I will not make a deferred sell issues, we will be looking for a supply chain management. That is, where from I will source the material, the raw material, because excise duty and the taxes becomes a very, very important role in the supply chain management. If I can source, my dear student, if I can source a raw material at a comparatively lower rate of tax or from some jurisdiction where the tax rate becomes almost nil, I can reduce my raw material cost. And tax also plays a very important role in the procurement segment, in the supply chain segment, because on the raw material, on the capital goods, as well as the services that I am procuring, I can take a credit of that taxes being paid at the input level. Earlier it was called SENVAT credit. After 2017 July, it is called as the GST credit. But yes, that is a very, very important area, and tax planning plays a very important role over there. Comes about the marketing, that also plays a very important role, because I need to, as a corporate, need to sell my product, need to establish myself and need to become a market leader. So in a marketing strategies, should I go for my own marketing or should I go for an outsourced one? Should I go for a multi-layer marketing or single tier marketing? These are all the questions, and here also tax plays a very important role. We'll be coming on the tax planning side. Coming back to the issue of the most vital important of finance, because sourcing of finance at a much comparable rate and deployment of the finance at a very accelerated increased rate of return ultimately gives the return to the shareholders or the stakeholders. And tax plays a very important role, because the PBT, profit before tax, and the profit after tax, the relationship between these two is the tax. And tax, if I can reduce by a proper planning, that gives a real success to the stakeholders. And obviously this comes out in several ways, like taking a decision on what will be the sources of finance, the deployment source, the dividend policies, the investment policies, the policies for the new investment, the policies for shifting my jurisdiction of my business, the decision on the new business acquisition, merger, takeover, etc. So in every sphere there is a tax planning that plays into a corporate role. And if we speak about R&D, the research and development, it is the basic need for success, basic need for the survival for the corporates. And the corporates only get a success if we have an extremely good research and development for developing a new product as the further requirement of the economy. So let's come one by one. Tax planning, it's basically a legislative right. I'm not avoiding, dear student, please have a conception clear. We are not avoiding tax. What we are doing in this particular subject, we are going to make effective tax planning to understand how tax planning reduces my tax liability. So if I have already understood what is a corporate planning, now shift this idea, this conception into a tax planning. In any tax planning, the fundamental thing that comes out is that how our tax planning under the tax laws effectively results in the higher rate of return to the stakeholders. In one way, it shows that you should have an extremely good and efficient sourcing policy. What is sourcing policy? The sourcing policy means where from I will source this money. Should I go for a debt capital, that means a loan borrowing, where I can get the benefit of interest payment for calculation of my profit before tax and profit after tax? Or should I go for own source, that is a source from my shareholders, from my equity source, wherein my liability remains with my dividend payment, and the taxation of the dividend becomes an important issue so far as taking a decision which source I should prefer. To go further, in a situation where in the capital mix, in the capital structure, if I can introduce more amount of the bigger amount of debt capital as a bigger percentage of the debt capital into the total capital structure, and a lower amount of equity in the total capital structure called as debt equity relationship, the result, because the interest becomes a fixed payment out, and after payment of the interest, the balance portion remains the money for the stakeholders. In other words, stakeholders get a better amount of return, better percentage of return if in the capital structure, in the capital mix, the greater amount of debt is embedded. So that means in a financial leverage, we are leveraging the capital structure, we are gearing the capital structure in which the more amount of debt is incorporated and a lower amount of equity is imparted. That results a very good return to the stakeholders, and that's precisely comes out of the question, out of this particular topic called as corporate tax planning. I move further. Tax planning is carried out by every of the corporates. We are speaking about the corporate tax policies for so many reasons. Let's understand reason number one, that if I can set up my industry in some specified tax haven zone or the tax neutral zone or no tax paying zone, say for example my unit is situated in a notified backward district or a backward state. For example, in my unit is situated at Dadra and Nagar Haveli or Uttaranchal or Himachal Pradesh or some of the northeastern states. These are the designated places where I can earn profit from my business, but my tax liability on the profit is nil for a particular number of years. Yes, my friends, tax planning plays a very important role, because I need to take a decision whether I should place my new business to set up. Should it be in Mumbai, or should it be in Taloja, should it be in Silvassa, should it be in Pantnagar of Himachal Pradesh? Is a decision, and tax planning plays a very vital role in this corporate planning. The second example that always can come up in tax planning with corporate planning, that means I being a corporate wanted to go for an infrastructure business. And in the infrastructure business, my business model will be setting up a construction of a highway or a bridge or a port or an airport, and for that port and airport or bridge or road would be used by the people, by the public of the country for a number of years, and I will be collecting toll or the toll charges on that usage. This revenue for me would be exempted from tax for a particular period of time, started or commencing from the date of its actual corporation, and it varies from the industry category: highway to bridge to road to port to airport, thermal power stations or the power distribution centers. So the sections and provisions of Income Tax Act, the purpose is to optimize the profitability from a particular business with an objective that if my PBT, profit before tax, remains at 100 rupees, operating profit 100 rupees, and if my tax I can bring it down to zero or near zero with a minimum alternative tax on that, then my profit after tax is maximizes. And this profit after tax becomes very, very vital for the stakeholders, because that has got a relationship in the equity market. My prices of the shares will go up. In the debt market, I will get a reputation to get more amount of money on the borrowings. From the bank borrowings, maximum permissible bank finance, and lot many other sectors. So in short, capital market, the money market, the debt market, and the market in which I am going to penetrate in future depends on my profit after tax. The objectives of the tax planning. Dear student can have a look on the screen. Reducing the tax incidences. Please remember, it is not a tax avoidance. We are not going to avoid anything. We are going to plan. Avoiding litigations, I should not I should not invite that sort of a business model where the department will give me a lot of showcase notices. So another second objective would be avoiding the litigations. Third would be productive investment. The investment in the new corporates, in the new businesses should be productive and should be for the progressive in the economy. That means whatever I have done or doing should be incremental to the economy, for the country, for the society, for the stakeholders, everybody. And that's the objective of our corporate tax planning. I move further to speak about something more on this tax planning. Tax planning always coupled with a number of issues of fine distinction. Should I go for avoidance or planning? Definitely not avoidance. In other words, I got a receipt. Dear student, mind the word. I got a receipt, a capital receipt, say a compensation for premature termination of a contract in a business. And this huge amount of money, should it be chargeable to tax or should it not be? It depends upon the first question, is it an income to me? If it is an income, it is taxable. And if I can define that it is a receipt, mere receipt and not an income, a number of Supreme Court judgments, number of jurisdictional authorities' decisions are there, which says if it is a mere receipts, you can say it is not an income and you can avoid the taxes. But once again, the planning and avoidance has got a distinct difference, and these distinct differences are always important to keep it in mind. And finally, in case of research and development, everywhere we find it out, a higher and higher amount of benefits are being provided by the government. You spend 100 rupees. Earlier we used to get 200 rupees tax benefit. Now from this year onwards, 150 rupees tax benefit. Obviously, it's a great incentive. Why not? We should invest in the research and development. The society will be developed. The corporates will be developed. Tax is going to give a support, and that's it. It's a management decision. A management need to take a decision. That's a corporate decision backed by a planning on tax. An appropriate tax planning and tax computation. A tax compliance, I should not avoid any provisions of the tax laws. And finally, a payment that will be appropriate so far as the tax liability is concerned. I should be very, very transparent in my tax planning, and that effective tax planning plays the most efficient role in a corporate planning for its survival, growth, retention, and progress in the future economy, in the future days. Students, we come to the conclusion of this episode on tax planning and corporate tax planning of Module 3. Hope you have all enjoyed this very short session, and we'll be definitely in this process, we'll be definitely coming back to you, and definitely I have shared my views which definitely have enriched you about the basic conception of corporate planning and corporate tax planning. Thanks everybody for this session.